Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? We've got another exit interview, this time with Jon and Xavier. It was a good one. Very lengthy, though. The responses are quite long, and it's a very long episode. So buckle in, sit back, grab your coffee, pay attention if you're driving. Make sure you're focusing on the road or whatever else you're doing. I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's go ahead and kick off into this thing.
You know, one of the things I was very curious sorry.
That's okay.
One thing I was curious about going into this episode is just, coming off of the last one, we know that one, was not your favorite, I'm sure, just some of the feedback that you got. So how did you rally yourself to go into this next episode?
I mean, I think we were still pretty nervous. The nerves are still there. And yeah, I think we talked it through in terms of like what our strategies would be and like learning how to like trust each other in terms of like our strengths. And that's kind of like how we were able to kind of pull through for actually most of the build. I think even though we were pretty nervous, I felt pretty confident in terms of like the sculpture and the details that Xavier was doing. So I was stressed the entire time, but I was pretty happy with what Xavier was doing.
Yeah. It's crazy because like Jon and I talked about it, like the previous challenge with the treehouse. We're like, oh man, like I'll be honest, we were kind of stuck on that challenge as far as concept, not necessarily the story, but the concept. So we did feel kind of like we got kind of lucky with how things played out. Like it's unfortunate how things happened, but he kind of got lucky in that regard. But I remember like once we saw the dogs and it was a whole sculpture building concept, I was super pumped because I want to just focus on the sculpture aspect of it. But it's one of those things where it's like, you can overuse a skill, right? So I think maybe I got so focused on the sculpture aspect that we forgot, or at least I forgot to focus more on like, wait,
we got to push the thing.
I know, we got to make sure it's structurally sound. Like, it's cool and all. And I felt like it looked pretty good for what it did, but it's like, we forgot to spend the balance of time as far as the actual reinforcement of it, right? Versus actually design. Yeah. And I think it worked out great.
Yeah. Honestly, I think this is going beyond just the normal question, but I think it was only the neck. The whole body was super solid when we put it onto the floor. I honestly felt like if I pushed it, like it would have held up really well.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, building for a competition, those criteria that are there, it's much different than building at your own pace and for your own, I don't know, not necessarily satisfaction, but just building at your own pace is much different because you have to always be mindful of those criteria that they're looking for. So even if it looks great, if you miss out on that one criteria, it's kind of like, that's just how things end up, unfortunately. But this is what it is.
Well, there's a lot of balls that you're juggling when it comes to these challenges. And obviously, as we saw on the show, you put the dog down, you put the collar on, you start to go, and then we have that separation with the head. Walk us through just like what it felt like to go through that moment. Obviously, you've already worked 11 hours and now what,
I was like, oh, it was a lot of like, in my mind, how could we recover? But I think at some point, yeah, go ahead, Xavier.
I mean, it was a bummer. Right before the judging, Jon and I were like, and we were always stressing because it's judging, we're always put on that pedestal of being, critiqued. And we're just like, did we do enough for it to withhold the movement, right? Because like, it's crazy because like in previous channels, we talked about testing so much, and just this challenge, we just focused so much on the build itself that we did not test enough. So there was a lot of anxiety and like, is it gonna hold? Is it gonna hold? And I don't know if it's a combination of weight or maybe just the resistance of the friction of the texture, right? Because when you're building on a table, yeah, because when we build on a table, it's relatively smooth, and pulling it on a leash, it's a little bit more forgiving. But then like on a different texture, we didn't really account for it as much during this challenge. So I was disappointed as soon as I knew this is falling off. I knew I could have reinforced the mouth a little bit better, not gonna lie. But once the head started falling off, it was like, man, we should have done a lot more reinforcing. And I'll take that upon myself, because I kind of my perspective or my focus wasn't enough on that connection point. Because ideally it would have made sense with the whole snot technique, but there wasn't enough built into it to kind of keep it secure.
Heartbreaking for sure. The one thing I'll ask you with my last question is, at the end of it, Xavier, you said, that you're just very happy that Jon was able to join you with this, and that he's such an amazing friend. So, what did it mean? What did it mean to both of you to get to spend this time together, to have this experience together?
So, like, when I was first reached out to about being part of the show, like I typically build independently, right? So I don't really have a lot of friends who build on their own creatively, right? They'll buy the sets and build the stuff, but as far as freestyling, it's not always there. It was like, who I know? It's like Jon was like the first person that came to mind, because we went to the same school together. We worked together actually at a Lego store. He was the one who helped me get a job and kind of helped me get back into that passion. Because when you're growing up and you just graduate high school and in college, you kind of like have different priorities and trying to figure yourself out. And just Jon being there as a great friend that he is, he kind of helped me like realign myself with my passion for building and what I enjoy. It kind of just got me back on that track. So I wouldn't even have been into position to be even considered building at all for this show. And Jon was a big part of me getting there. So I thought it was just like, this is a poetic come full circle type of thing. It's like, hey, here's this friend who's always been there and kind of helped you where you need to be. Like, I want him to get the recognition and the shine for the amazing person that he is. I don't know. I'm very sappy right now, but I really feel like that. It just, I don't know, it just felt very appropriate, and I'm just very glad he was able to join me on the show.
And what about for you, Jonathan?
Yeah. Like my main goal after he picked me was like, I want to carry him all the way and cheerlead him all the way to the end. That was like my main goal. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to step it up. It's like even though I got him into the passion of it, like my career trajectory was strictly into like game design, like a different type of like creative field, and I've always just done a lot of hobby stuff, like my own mocks, and I kept it to myself. I would build mechas, I kind of put it onto the side and just like appreciate it. I live in New York. There's not a lot of space to kind of build, and I also share this space with my wife. So it is it's hard trying to even find time to express that the Lego mock hobby. And when I got the chance to be on the show, I bought as much sets as I could to like reignite like what's new out there, like remember all of the pieces, because just so I'm on a better like technical language speaking when I'm on the floor with Xavier. It was a lot of like relearning, but a lot of the creativity in game design kind of flowed in between making good ideas on it. But yeah, I was really happy. TLDR, really happy.
TLDR.
Well, you both have a lot to be proud of. I just thank you again for everything you gave us on the show, and I hope to get to talk to you again soon.
Great, thank you, Joy. Xavier, Jon, it's nice to see you again, but sadly, under these circumstances, really enjoyed your builds. I have to say that, of course, I've never participated on the show, but I think last night's challenge was the hardest. I mean, trying to do a sculpture is hard, and I really appreciated the effort that you put in. I think your likeness for your dog was really spot on. My first question for you is about some of your other builds. There's a lot of builds, and they summarize at the end, and every build is shown for about maybe 10 seconds on the show. I'm curious from your perspective if there's any particular details that you wish had been featured on the show that might not have been shown.
Ooh, I have one.
Oh, but there's so many.
Yeah.
I'll let you lead.
Yeah, I think the main one I wanted to point out is that in our first build with the Millennium Mango, there's a mecha. What isn't showcased is that you can actually I built it so you can open up the mecha and there's a minifigure pilot inside. I didn't know if that was we were ever going to showcase that, but I did kind of like show that to the judges while we were building. So that was kind of what I was thinking. But it was also our first challenge, and we were just how should we do this, and how should we show off like what was in our build. It was kind of our first stab at like trying to show what we're all about.
I would say they're like, I don't know, maybe there's a couple of things. I would say for that first challenge, I wish they showed more of John's storytelling on that, because we had a lot of funny inside like Filipino jokes, right? Because we had like they're transporting cargo, because like in Filipino culture, there's a lot of balikbayan boxes as far as shipping goods back to the family back in the Philippines. So we had a lot of like crates of mangoes within the giant mango, which is pretty funny. We had a whole name of the company called Sarapko, which translates to I'm delicious, and just John's delivery on that was just hilarious. I would say for radar, John did like a really not necessarily last minute detail, but within the last hour, he made like the radar gun spin around to search for the golden brick. So that was a fun little detail. I wish they kind of like highlighted a little bit more, just because John really did a great job on that. And then I think on like the final build, when it came to Murphy, right? I wish they showed a little bit more of the face, because like for me, one of my favorite parts is a minifigure cape. Like you don't really think about how it can be used, and we used that minifigure cape for the tongue, and the judges really like that. But I didn't feel like it was definitely shown enough to be like, hey, cool, you use this part, NPU, nice parts usage. You use this, minifigure cape in this fashion, right? And I don't know, just highlighting, that's the best part about Lego, is using a piece without its intended purpose initially, right? So I wish they kind of like highlighted at least that aspect of Murphy's face.
Well, a lot actually gets edited out. They did mention it. And right. Yeah, so we get to have that personally in the back of our minds. Like, oh, they didn't call it out. So.
Those sound like great details for sure. Now I'll have to go back and take a look at that episode and see if I can spot some of those details. They sound great. My second question, with respect to building on the set, I mean, you're there with the clock, the lights, all the, Will Arnett stopping by to talk to you. What was the biggest challenge of getting your builds done in the time?
Like even before, go ahead, Xavier. Yeah.
So I don't know about you, John, but I think for the first couple of challenges, we were very fortunate to have tables closer to the brick pit. And the kind of way that both John and I build, we're definitely more of a mess around and find out type of things. Let's grab the pieces as we need. There's not a lot of preconceived pieces that like, oh, we're definitely going to need that. It's like, oh, we could use that. We could use that. So we could use that. All right, cool. And then our table's a whole mess, right?
Yeah.
And that benefit of being closer to the brick pit was definitely an advantage. And then like the later challenges, right? I don't want to say it's the only reason, but it was definitely an adjustment, having to be more deliberate about the choices that we make when we do go to the brick pit. Because it's like, we don't have a lot of time going back and forth. It's like, oh, I got to grab these pieces. Do we need them or not? And then, they're constantly trying to replenish too. So you can run there and look for the piece that you want, and it's not there yet. So now you're like waiting and working on ideas. Like I was totally devoted to working on this right now, but I kind of have to pivot on working on something else. I feel like that was, for me, I think that was our biggest adjustment, trying to manage that was a big part.
Yeah. I think on my end, it was a bit of nerves and balancing that between us. Like there was a lot of like, I guess, a little bit mental blockage because when we're both pitching ideas and we're trying to figure out like what the concept is, there tends to be like, is this enough? This like is this yeah, and like is this what the judges are looking for? And does this like hit all the right beats? Oh yeah, go ahead, Xavier.
Yeah, to your point, right? Because like when you're so involved in the building, you're used to a certain way of building and what looks nice to you or what you feature. But again, building for a competition is much different. So like Jon would always provide that outside perspective and kind of have to help me reset a little bit of like, whoa, we're focusing too much on this. I need you to work on this. And it's a give and take too, because it's like sometimes Jon would have some crazy ideas and it's like, I love it. We don't have the time to do this. Yeah. So it's there was a lot of like figuring out what we can do within the time that we have. And it's, it's definitely a learning process in the moment. It's just not something you can really account for right off the bat.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've had the opportunity to visit the set and I've seen it's a pretty imposing environment. I can't imagine building there. So I have great admiration for all of the teams that actually participate in the show. My last question for you is, do you have a particular favorite memory or experience that you look back on, whether it's an interaction with Amy and Jamie or with Will or your other contestants?
Man, everyone's pretty cool. Like everyone that got casted is really awesome.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a moment, I mean, Christine and Michelle, they're awesome. We were whenever we would like get lined up, either for like when Annette does the intros. What is edited out is that we would always joke around with each other. Like everyone would kind of like have their own little snippets of funny moments. And I don't know if it was just them trying to like get material for the show, but honestly, it was great hanging out with everyone. Like everyone's pretty funny. Yeah.
They got a picture of you and Christine on the side during like Challenge 4. It was like, yeah, that's the total vibe that like everyone had with each other. It's just, it's just, I don't know, everyone was really great. There wasn't any like negative animosity or anything. It didn't feel like everyone got along. They're just like, oh man, this challenge, oh my God, I don't know, the camaraderie is really great. I don't know, like when I reflect on it, it's just the fact that Jon and I were there and we got to build a lot of cool stuff that we both enjoy, feel like represented our interests well. It's like, we got to build the stuff we wanted to build in like early on. So it's just like, hey man, this is already cool.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. I really did enjoy your builds on the show. I thought they were a lot of fun, and hopefully I will see you out there somewhere at a Lego convention somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Joy. And hello, Xavier and Jonathan. My Tagalog isn't very good, but mabuhay.
Yeah, hey, mabuhay.
It's better than mine.
I'm here with the Brickanista Broadcast Network, and I have 3 questions, but we will tag team with Remy, Brick Literacy. So my first question is, you had just mentioned Christine or Tacos and Michelle, and we recently had a chance to talk with them about how they really felt proud to be able to represent the Latino community. And I wanted to ask you about being a pair of Asian Americans who are on this show. And I wanted to tell you, you served us proud. I was very proud to see the 2 of you there. Wanted to ask you if you felt, was there an extra burden you felt about having that big responsibility, or how did you feel about being a representative of the Asian American community?
I felt a little bit of it. Little bit to like a lot, depending on which episode, where we had to really showcase, our culture. What about you, Xavier?
I was pretty excited. I mean, we got to represent our culture literally in the first challenge. So it's just like, hey, all of that, like the spaceship, the Millennium Mango, like all of it was pretty much based on.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think
Filipino culture, the mechas. Yeah.
There was like, when we were told the prompt, we had to like X a lot of some of our ideas. Where one of them was like things that we would see in like a Filipino household. Either what was one of them? I don't think it was like.
I don't remember.
It was
There's
like
a lot of stuff.
there was a lot of stuff. We ran through a bunch of them, and then we tried to see if it would be in like a spaceship form, and if would that resonate. And we kind of went down this list of things. Like actually, when we said when we made up this like the story of the buy and box company, and like this giant mango spaceship,
Yeah.
we're like that's the one. Let's roll with that one.
Yeah.
It felt really good to have moments like that click.
Yeah, even the treehouse, like we named it Fort Puno, and our Tagalog is not great at all.
Oh, it's so bad.
Probably mispronounced it, but Puno translates to tree in Tagalog.
So it's like tree fort.
Like tree fort. So it's just like there's like a lot of little nods to our Asian, Filipino upbringing. So it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. I don't know if there was necessarily pressure for me personally. It was just more excitement to represent, where we're from or our heritage. It was very exciting knowing my parents would watch the show. So it was just like, I wanted to make stuff that I would imagine they would like see and be like, haha, I can recognize that. Oh wow, you did that. I was always thinking of them, watching the show when we were there.
Well, that's wonderful. And we loved your mango mech and all of these stories that you had. And I'm sure that you didn't get to get the full cut because they only had so much time to spend on every build. But thank you for sharing that. And the next question will be from Remy.
Yeah, that mango starship was great. But yeah, my question is, what does the future hold for you two? Are we going to get to see another collaboration from you? Or what conventions do you plan on attending? Or just what are your general future plans with Lego?
I'll start. What's cool is that the Lego Masters, I guess, cast, even from past seasons, they're all pretty awesome. Some of them have reached out to me, and they want to like meet up at the next conventions. And those are the things that I kind of want to do, is like go to these conventions with Xavier. I don't know if we can carry a lot of our builds because we're kind of nervous of it like breaking on its way there. But I just want to meet more AFOLs. I in New York though it's kind of hard for me. But I think with this more exposure, it's exciting to see like everyone and doing that again.
Yeah, I would like to go to more conventions. To John's point, I think it's just a little bit tricky in New York because there's really not a lot of Lego conventions that come by New York City. It's always you got to drive somewhere, and like of course we're from New York. We both don't know how to drive, or at least
I'm learning.
So it's like, how can we bring the stuff that we made, on a plane? It's like I gotta get a whole saran wrap thing going on and overhead luggage. So the logistics is like, how do we do this? Like, I don't know, but at some point I would love to go to conventions with John and just connect with all the fans and reconnect with people we've been on the show. It's, I don't know. I like to look forward to that. I want to start building more frequently, because I do have some builds, but a lot of it is just unfinished stuff. So, having showcased our talents is like, I want to be able to still build stuff that people will enjoy regardless if it's on a TV show or any other platform.
Yeah, well, maybe we can convince them to send a car for you guys next convention or something. But yeah, I really enjoy your anime builds as well. So I would love to see more of those at a convention.
Oh, sure.
But now I will throw it back to Naomi.
Thanks, Remy. Speaking of anime, I wanted to mention that photo of you doing the Dragon Z ball pose is absolutely amazing. And I wish they would have spent more time doing that. And I'm kind of curious about, we had this conversation with Christine, Tacos, and Michelle about how there wasn't a lot of time spent on their personal life. So a lot of people didn't know that they were moms, for example. And you had mentioned, Jonathan, that you have a wife, and they really didn't talk much about your families. And also, I'm going to tie it into the episode. So do you have dogs, your family? What kinds of things would you have liked to have seen more of on the show? And I'm sure if you do have a dog, this episode must have been so much fun. Yay!
All right, guest star.
Yes.
Yes, I do have a dog. She's awesome. And I recently got married with my wife about a year ago. One of the things that I was actually really proud of, that we yeah, a lot of the family stuff and personal stuff isn't really shared. But one of the things that I was appreciative is that my mom introduced me to Legos and allowed me to kind of like foster a lot of my creativity, both which skyrocketed my design career. Because Lego led into video games, and it led into a lot of like nerd culture. And I hope I made her proud. She passed away in 2018. And then my dad passed 6 months later. So I lost both my parents very recently. I felt like they edited that out just so it wasn't a downer on Lego Masters, but it was a lot of outside of helping Xavier reach the end. I wanted to make my parents proud, allowing them to let me be creative and go into a non medical field or like science field type of track, and just kind of trusted me to let my creativity foster.
That's so beautiful, Jonathan. How about you, Xavier?
I don't know. I feel like we represented ourselves well. As far as being of Asian descent, Filipino culture, and loving anime. I feel like as far as that, I feel like it definitely conveyed that. Yeah, I don't really have anything that I'm necessarily. I don't know. I don't really have. I don't really have anything to comment on that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't have a response to that. Yeah. Yeah. I will say though. Sorry. I did feel very appreciative because I know when we did get eliminated, they cut a lot of the stuff that we say because we all go in our heartfelt moments. But I did mention a lot of like just growing up and not even imagining even having this opportunity to be on the show, right? I was obsessed with Lego as a kid. I still love it now. And a lot of us being there for me was at least being grateful and more like saying thank you to everyone who supported me and said, hey, you should build more, you should be on the show. It's like I don't imagine this kind of stuff happening. So I don't know. I'm not disappointed by anything. I just wish we could have stayed longer, but I feel like we were represented well.
You definitely did. Thank you both. And we're very proud of you. You are both amazing builders. And thank you very much for doing a great job representing the Asian American community. And what was the name of your dog again? I'm sorry.
Oh, Cammy.
Oh, your dog.
My dog. My dog is
your dog.
Yeah, but the dog that we had on the show was Murph. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I meant your dog, but
yeah. CAMMY.
Okay.
It was based off a Street Fighter character that does like these kicks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So my first question, you already touched on this a little bit by mentioning that you've both been Lego fans since you were young, but how did you get into the hobby and how did that land you on the show?
I think like I started really early. What they didn't show is like pictures of both of us playing Lego when we were super young. I think that was before they had the little age range of like, hey, kids this young shouldn't be playing with Lego. Yeah, I mean, I'm drawing a blank.
I'll speak for myself, right? Like, I was young, so I don't remember specific Lego sets that I had. I know there's like a video of me building like a little house and I was being babysat when I was like 3-4 years old. And, I think I've told this story before, but I remember like the babysitter was asking me and my sister to eat, get like lunch, and I was too busy building, and they have it on video, like a VHS. I was like, I don't want noodles. And it was like, I just wanted to keep building. So it was, you always had that like that blue Lego briefcase, that really thick plastic one that you carried everywhere. But I never really got like crazy obsessed with it until like 1998. And I mentioned it before, the set that I got, 6558 Shark Cage Cove. and that was the first set, and that was enough for me, right? I built this, started playing with the set, tried to build stuff, didn't even realize there was instructions because I just looked at the back of the box, was like, I'm gonna try to build that. That's really cool. And then just looking at that, and then looking at the catalog and seeing this amazing amount of sets that existed and all these little worlds and micro stories that didn't have necessarily a story, but you can kind of just imagine what you can take from it, right? And that already got me going, and I was already obsessed at that point. So like literally less than a year later, right, like a substitute teacher asked the class what we wanted to do when we grew up, and I told her that I wanted to build a Lego and get paid for it, and she didn't understand what that meant, right? So but then when I look at like my journey later on, especially with Jon helped me getting back into it, because like I remember I was going through some like rough transition. I remember telling Jon when he was working at the Lego store, because I was bummed that I didn't get to work there because of things that happened. And I told him this too, but I told him like, honestly, when I was younger, all I want to do was build a Lego. So he eventually helped me get a job, get me back on my feet. And that kind of just got me where I need to be. Like I've had a lot of great experiences building with Lego. I've got to work at a Discovery Center. I was a master builder for that for a brief moment. I got to visit headquarters and meet Lego masters. I got to go to conventions and do a lot of experiences just for this thing that I was obsessed with when I was younger and still love now. Like we even got to meet the president of the company. Both Jon and I got to meet him at one point.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just like it's crazy to imagine like myself as a kid just being obsessed with this one set that would just take me through this entire journey throughout my life to be able to have all these wonderful experiences because of this toy. And just like even being on the show is just, I don't know, it meant a lot. It meant a lot. It still means a lot. And I know I'm going on a whole diatribe, but I don't know. There's so many experiences that I enjoy just because of the, this toy and this company. So I'm just very grateful for everything.
Sounds like a pretty amazing trip you've had there. My next question is one that I often get through my blog from adults who are just getting back into the Lego hobby. So what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out as an adult with Lego?
Find what like the most out of a set and just kind of run with it. I mean, it's different for everyone. I think for me, I found a Lego set called it was an Exoforce set called Supernova. The number is like 7712, and that set really turned me into being like this mecha focused builder. I don't actually have a lot of photos, and I don't share those photos at all. I probably should upload them. And that kind of sent me into a journey of learning how to be a better Lego mecha builder. I ended up following a bunch of really talented Lego mock accounts and just trying to analyze their techniques and almost like break down, like reverse engineer, like how they did it. That's kind of like my process of relearning how to build with technique. I remember when I was building on Lego Masters with Xavier, and he was like, I'm trying to remember the code, Xavier. It was like, oh, okay. This is not word for word. It's like, oh, it's time to stop playing. Let's start building. Something around those.
I don't remember saying that. That's crazy. Yeah, I really don't remember saying
it was like we were like in a tense moment and we're just like, all right, let's build. And there's a difference between playing and building. And I understood that immediately when building it.
Yeah. I would say for any adult getting back into the hobby, because in a sense, I kind of had to do that myself. Not to say I lost it completely, but just being immersed in that world. I wasn't immersed in it for a while, right? So just getting back into it, it's like find the sets that you would enjoy, that you like. But I would also say don't stop there, right? Because you can build something and put it on the shelf and it looks great. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what got me really excited, like Jon mentioned, is seeing all the mocks that people would build, right? And I, when early on when I started getting back into it, there wasn't really a lot of anime mocks online and stuff like that, or maybe here or there. And it's like, hey, that's really cool. I want to try to build my own. So I'm just going to take apart these sets and just figure it out, reverse engineer it. And it doesn't always come out the way that you want to do, but just being willing to figure something out to make something that you really would like to see, right? I wouldn't say wait for someone to make it for you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to make something, there's nothing stopping you from trying to do that, and that's what I would say for anyone getting back into the hobby. Just start, just building. But if you want to make something on your own, take that next step.
Great advice. So my next question is also an advice related one. I was watching you guys on the show last night and all the other teams with those sculpture builds, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, I wouldn't know where to start building a dog. So they don't really show us much of the creation process when we watch the episode. So can you talk us a little bit through what it was like designing that? Where did you start?
I mean, outside of talking with Xavier, like we started creating game plans. Just I think template wise, we're like, here's the concept. We'll spend 30 minutes there, and then we'll create like a prototype, just really quickly, and then we'll decide how to spend the rest of our time. I from what I remember that episode, it was like frame, legs, and then Xavier was the lead design on the sculpture of the face. Go ahead. Xavier.
Yeah, it was one of those things because like Jon is very good on smaller builds and he's packs a lot of detail, but trying to build on a bigger scale, like I'm more familiar with trying to make sure the frame is set. So it's just like, okay, cool. Let me try to make a frame that Jon can understand and just work with that. So then while he's working on that, I'm going to focus on the details of the face. And that was kind of the strategy that we had. We had tried to break it down in times, like periods of like, oh, where do we need to get this done? Where do we need to get that done? But then you realize how much little time you actually have or how fast time really passes. So it's like, oh man, I thought these 3 hours it would have been done, but it wasn't done. So it's like having to adjust. That's where it got a little bit difficult in that regard, right? So we did have a strategy. It's just, I don't know. It's again, just from earlier, finding that balance of like, how much time do we really need to invest on this versus making sure we hit those points and make sure it passed the criteria. And then we can focus on the finer details and presentation afterwards. And then, I don't know, I'll take the fall for it. I kind of got a little bit caught up on the details aspect of it. But, it is what it is, it's a competition and then you don't really have a lot of time to make up for split decisions that you make that may not have been the best decision at that time.
Yeah, I think a learning lesson like postmortem is that if anyone that's like listening to get like a head up in terms of like advice and tips for Lego Masters is that when you're hitting the 1 hour, 2 hour mark before the build ends, run it through as if you were going to present to the judges and make sure you're solid. Because the worst thing that will happen is that with just like Xavier and I, is that we didn't fully test the thing that it's supposed to do at the end of the day. And to don't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you very much. That was my 3 questions. So I'll pass it on to the next interviewer.
Hello.
Hello again.
Hi. Nice to speak to you once again. And it's a shame in these circumstances, but congratulations for getting this far into the show. I've got to say, I think this week's build was like, in terms of the actual build itself, was so strong. It's just a shame, obviously, that like it kind of broke apart. But I guess there's one of the questions I wanted to ask is like, how do you find it with the like having to balance the kind of creativity and I guess like the actual concept of the build and also the kind of having to meet the sort of criteria of each challenge?
I think it depends on the challenge, because for some challenges, like take example, if we had to redo the treehouse challenge, right? It honestly, it wasn't a structure challenge. Was an aesthetics challenge, because they wanted to actually see things from far away and then come in and look at the details. So then we would structure how we would do our concepts and prototypes first. Like, okay, what would look good from far away? Oh, hey, a big UFO stuck in a tree.
Yeah, we totally done that.
Yeah.
We talked about it afterwards. Like, man, we could have just made a cool shape and we could have still had the story. Yeah, I think just for that challenge, sorry to interrupt. I think we got focused on the stories so much, and we thought our story was strong, but we didn't focus enough on the structure and aesthetic of it. To John's point, every challenge was a learning experience. I think the one that really hit us the most, to be honest, was the second challenge, because we clashed a lot on that, and it's because, again, you're locked in this mindset on how you want to build based on your experience versus what's actually going to work for a competition, translate to like a TV set or in front of the judges, and it was tough for me to realign with that. And John would try to like, oh my God, trust me on this, and it's like it doesn't always hit, but it's like I'm glad he was there because he has a lot of great insight on that aspect. Because it's like you have to have a different perspective when you're building on things. And it's not just about what you're used to building, but how can you can you use the skills that you have, but build something else that's presentable for what they're looking for than what you are normally used to building. So understanding, whoa, I don't have time to focus on details because like for that challenge, right, you had a bigger scale and we never worked at a bigger scale. So it's like, how do we adjust to fill up the space rather than trying to fill up with a lot of details? How the focus of the challenge is more about the scene and that rather than just making it look cool. And that was just very jarring to me. It was very jarring to me. And John, I'm sure John will be honest if you want to ask him right now, but it was very jarring to me. But that type of
it was a different style of thinking.
Yeah, and it was great because like we both kind of had that didn't clash, like we did clash, but it was definitely a lot of like having to both realize the value of both our perspectives and kind of have to combine it for what we need to do, right? And it's tough for each challenge because like some challenge we did great, some of them we focused too much, and then you make one split decision. It's like, oh man, we could have just adjusted on that. So it's a lot of it is kind of reflecting and be like, oh yeah, we could have done that instead, right? And it's harder to think of that in the moment because you're kind of default to certain.
I think the learning lesson that we learned across each episode is we really have to listen to the prompts and make sure that in terms of balancing creativity and what it's supposed to deliver, like if you can just hit the right points, like it's almost like you just don't want to be in the bottom, right? That's how you kind of get through longer, and you figure that out usually in the first like 20 minutes, like what the build is supposed to be, and you just kind of like double down until you get a pivot from the judges. Honestly, that's kind of how I think most people had to go through Lego Masters. It's just like you either double down or you pivot with the time remaining, and they all come with risks.
Yeah, and it's also cool. Like you always want to stand out too, of course, because it's always great. Yeah, you want to stand out, but you can't make that be your only focus because you can stand out. It looks great, but if it doesn't hit those prompts, then it's like, okay, you focus so much time on trying to be distinctual that you didn't devote enough time for what needed to be done. And it's all a balancing act, overuse and underuse of your skills and competencies. And you're going to have to adjust. I feel like every team has had to adjust and realize, wait, no, we can't do this the way that we would like to do it because something else needs to be done instead.
Yeah, so yeah, that's as well. I think there's the kind of sense as well of like the pressure is always on, even if you kind of like, you know, you win, you come first place in one week. There's you're back onto a kind of level playing field of, you know, you're being judged solely on each prompt, which is always kind of keeps it always on edge. But yeah, that's my next question would be, when it comes to, you know, sort of comparing doing the stuff on, you know, in your at home when you've got your in your own time and everything is kind of like set up the way that you're kind of used to it being set up. What is it like going from that to going into the studio where you know, you've just got like such the actual layout, everything's so different, and you've got this really short sort of, you know, time span.
You have to relearn all the landscape, honestly, because
Yeah.
you'll find out that there's going to be a lot of really cool pieces, but not in the color that you want.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's such a big variety. But yeah, there's certain colors that you would like to build. You realize after the fact, oh man, we already started on this. I can't complete the idea that would look best based on what I know pieces that exist, because this piece isn't here for what I need, or it hasn't been restocked yet. So it was just like there's extra elements that I don't know if a lot of people watching realize, that the brick pit isn't as unlimited or free or diverse as you think it is, right? A lot of it is working within the constraints based on the situation.
And it changes too, slightly.
Yeah.
Each episode, it changes just a bit, so you can get new pieces that weren't in the previous episode, or they just swap things completely.
Right. And just learning the layout too is just like, oh man, I know this piece, I need this piece. It's just like, there's a big learning process. Like, where is this piece? You spend so much time. It's like, wait, I came here to get this and I see it here, but where's the part that goes with this? Like if there's like a hinge plate or a hinge brick, it's like, I have the one component. Where's the other part? I can't make a door without the other half of this hinge brick.
Luckily, I was there to kind of help you out. Yeah, because I ran over, was like, where's this hinge brick? And I was like, it's right over there. And then we just kind of like cross paths. Yeah.
But there's just, oh my gosh, there's so much. Yeah, it's very overwhelming. And when you're at home, you know where things are and you know the things that you have. But when you're somewhere else, it's just like, I don't know if we have this or not. And that was a big adjustment for everyone, not just us, but for everyone. It's just like, oh, whoa.
Yeah. Like how I helped out there is that I started to kind of close my eyes and remember where each types of pieces, because eventually it becomes intuitive, where the sizes and the lengths of where the pieces are located in the brick pit, it becomes more muscle memory after like about an episode or two, I think. But I held that down pack just in case like Xavier's just like, where the heck is this new piece?
Yeah. Even like getting stuff restocked, you can grab so many extra pieces and you realize there's none left there because other teams may have used it, or maybe because you can't have too many trays on your table, because then it's just like, hey, now you're just hoarding all the pieces. That's a little bit unfair to everyone else. But it's like, okay, I gotta give these pieces that I don't need back. It's like, wait, was there pieces on there that I actually needed and they weren't like restocked yet? So it was just like, oh man. Like there are some times where I would try to build a frame. It's like there's totally a piece that would come in great just to reinforce it. And it's like, they don't have that piece right now.
Yeah. And then our math becomes off.
And it's just like, yeah, it's like the structure's not going to work because I had based it on this one component that's just not there right now. So,
or not in the right color, because we're also thinking about color theory on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think as well with that, I guess you're having to kind of keep in mind that there's like, you always have like a plan B in terms of what you're going to build, because you're probably going into it thinking like, oh yeah, we're going to have this piece and that piece, and realizing you're running out of time, you can't find that piece, and then suddenly you've got to kind of like improvise with something else. I'm sure there's a lot of that, in play as well.
Totally.
But yeah, I guess my last question would be, if you had to pick like just like solely one sort of takeaway from the entire kind of experience, what do you think that would be?
I mean, for
Quite a
me,
difficult question.
yeah, I mean, I already touched on it earlier. Is just being grateful for just being there, right? Just even just going into the first like casting interview that we were there, I kind of like I got overwhelmed. I kind of like broke into a little bit of tears because it was still surreal and unbelievable for me to be there, for John to be there with me. It's just like this is unreal. Like it's still unreal that I've like we've gone through this experience because it was very overwhelming and just like wow, like I never thought that this passion, this thing I was obsessed with, this talent, I never knew it would be recognized or valued in the way that it is, to be like, hey, we think you're great and we want people to see what you can do. And there's just something very humbling and just very grateful for just to be on that stage.
I agree with that. I think takeaway. Who's the takeaway for? Is this an advice piece or is it just
I think more than anything, I think it's just your personal kind of like what you got out of it, you know.
Oh yeah, no, friends. Like treat everyone with kindness and courtesy. Like we left Lego Masters friends with everyone. We are taking those friendships past Lego Masters. So I think I was very happy to meet more AFOLs. Like this is actually my first real AFOL group. These Lego Masters. I could not be. I think everyone there.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, thank you so much for once again, and amazing contestants, and it was great to have a chance to speak to you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Hey guys, how are y'all? I'm glad to see you here and get some questions answered from you guys. I thought the builds that you've done are really incredible. I want to talk about last night's episode. I mean, seeing the dog's head break, I immediately took a giant cringe. I was like, "Oh, this is not okay." So, what was the reaction in your head from both of you? Because obviously, you have to keep your composure.
I think for me, I was taking cues from Xavier, just to see like what I should do. When I saw him make the decision, just pick it up and go, I was like, okay, well, let's roll with that and see if we can make it up through the details, any explanation of how we built the sculpture. And also it was actually super solid in terms of structure. Like if we pushed it down outside of just like the head, it would have held up.
Yeah, John is really great at recognizing that I do get caught up in my nervous anxieties. So like him being able to read that off me, it's I definitely appreciate that a lot. As far as the head falling off, again, I was already nervous about the mouth because I should have reinforced it, but the head, I was just more like, oh man, how did I just not reinforce it enough? Because I felt like presentation wise it was strong enough to survive to the next challenge, but it was just like, and I knew how to reinforce it because I've been making frames every challenge, like except for like the dinosaur the Jurassic Park challenge. I've been making frames with the same idea and how to reinforce it, but I think the pressure is like maybe I got so focused on just getting it done that reinforcing it didn't come to my mind. And it was such a bummer because I thought we did well. And again, I was excited because I love sculpting. Like I don't normally sculpt dogs, but I love trying to build shapes out of Lego. And I was very excited for this challenge. And it's just like, dang, the structure, I just forgot to reinforce that one component. And it's just like, it was a bummer. I will say though, like I was a little bit not relieved, but I know Dom and Ethan, like Ethan and Dom, they also had issues with their dog falling apart. and it kind of didn't like quell the nervousness, but it was also at least somewhat not reassuring, but it's also be like, we're not the only ones who had a struggle with that aspect of it. Even with Emily and Liam, I know they didn't get to finish their build, but just knowing that, hey, it wasn't just you who messed up, is that everyone, at least there were situations where someone may have fallen to the same trap or the same unfortunate situation. So it was a little more. It was nice. It was nice. That's not the greatest word to use, but it was at least like, hey, you worked hard on this build, and it doesn't always come out the way you want it to, regardless of how you feel about it, right? So it felt, I guess, like empathetic and relatable to know other people had gone through the same thing that we did.
Very nice to hear. You weren't alone in your misery. That is for sure. So what is something, I know Amy and Jamie are always chatting and we don't get to see it. So what is something that maybe they had taught you guys or maybe inspired in you moving forward with your building?
I really appreciate their feedback and their perspective, right? Because they're master builders in their own right. They have design sets, they work and work from time to time. There are certain challenges like I wish they would have come to our table sooner. So, because their feedback is very critical. It's just like, oh man, we could have pivoted earlier if we got that feedback sooner. And that's just like how things play out. But them pointing out things to pay attention to, it kind of sets reminders in your head, regardless if you're on the show or not, of like, hey, if you want your work to stand out, this is what you got to pay attention to, right? Presentation, color, whatever other criteria, just keeping that in the back of your mind whenever you decide to make something is like, what do you want to come across, and make sure you focus on those points.
Yeah, you pretty much covered it, Xavier. It's like realigning like what's important in your build to succeed in the competition. I think in general it pushed us to like go bigger with just the size or the color or the overall like technique. I definitely grew as a builder from each episode.
Yeah. I did really appreciate, I know one of the challenges, at least with the treehouse, they pointed out, it's like, oh man, Jon and Xavier are really struggling. It's like, I know, it sucks. But it's like, it was in a weird way, it was like I guess a compliment, because it's like, they're struggling. We didn't expect them to struggle because their previous builds have been, great, enjoyable, and quirky. So it's just like, having set that standard for what we want to do, right? You don't always get to meet it in the way that you want to, but being able to represent ourselves to say, hey, this is what we're capable of doing, and this is what we want to do for you. Having that recognition from them felt very, very satisfying.
That's great to hear. I really like hearing that. The last question I have for you guys, you've done many, many builds in the short time that you were on the show. I say short time, it was 5 episodes. It's a long time. What was your favorite build that you guys have done throughout the competition?
Radar is awesome.
That was my favorite. That was my favorite. I'm telling you right now, because I build a lot of anime figures and faces. I have a face right now that I could show if you want, but it's like, I told Jon, it's like, dude, I want to build a giant anime girl at some point, like maybe for like a final challenge or something. And you're telling us we can build one on the 3rd challenge? What? Oh, we're totally doing this. Just like, we got super pumped for that. And oh, that was, so that was one detail that I wish they showed, right? Because I spent time on the face and building the eyes, like, snot wise, and they really loved the face, and the face actually survived the build.
Yeah.
And like solid. Will Arnett sold it. It's like, oh, there's the face. That's gonna look so great. And then he threw it on the ground. I was like, oh my god, you broke it on his face. And they didn't show that at all. So it was like, oh man. But dude, just the fact that we got to build that, and it was like, giant anime robot girl. What? Man, I was excited for that.
It was structurally sound too. I was pretty proud of like almost like all parts. I think I felt like I could have done a bit more detailing.
Yeah, but you did a great job for what you did. Like you got the arms there, you got the radar gun, which is great. You got the detailing of the armor. It was just like, oh man, like that was my favorite, to be honest.
That was my favorite.
And I do love the Millennium Mango too, because I thought that was just the most representative thing of what we do. Exactly. Like, let's build a spaceship. Nah, we're gonna build a mango. Let's build a mango instead.
And have the mecha.
Yeah,
with like Filipino colored, like Filipino flag colors on it.
Because like you love mechs, and we're like, dude, we can build a mech on the first episode, and it could potentially go to space. It's like, what? Let's totally do this. And it just, I don't know. Those two are my favorite.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, those are my favorite.
I really liked your anime build. I thought it was really good. And I mean I wish, like you said, Xavier, we would have had a chance to see that detail. But you know, maybe in the still shots that they have, we can find it somewhere. But well, thank you for your time, guys, and hopefully we cross paths at one of the major conventions down the road. Well, that'll do it. That's going to wrap up today's episode with Jon and Xavier, who are now, you know, free from Lego Masters, and they are free to go off and do their own thing. And hopefully you guys have an opportunity to run into them in a convention in the future, wherever around the country or maybe outside of the country. So that's going to wrap up the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was an interesting time, really interesting to hear a lot of the design stuff from them. You don't get to see this kind of stuff on the show. You see a very quick snapshot, a snippet, and you miss so much. So until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.